he has released the MLK files.
You woke up the dragon.
And something I think you might want to see in here is, according to these files, Dr. King was planning the Washington Spring Project in the spring of 1968, where he was going to be demanding that Congress enacted $20 billion per year. That's $185 billion a year in 2025 in anti-poverty programs for the next 10 years. So that would have been $200 billion, close to $2 trillion in what would have been reparations in 1968. He planned massive protests nationwide. They were going to shut down major cities. They were going to bring together the anti-war movement, the culmination of the civil rights movement.
Ultimate fire blast!
And he was shot and killed in 1968.
There it is, one of the most evil legislations that was ever passed. The 1939 Cancer Act. Basically what this is it made it illegal, a criminal offense, for doctors and healthcare workers to actually help cure cancer, to recommend things that would cure cancer. So this was passed in England in 1939, but it was pushed worldwide. It's still in effect today in Canada, America. This is why when you go to see a doctor, they will recommend chemo or their very expensive treatments, but they can't say this herb will help, or this, or soursop, or or like ivermectin, or something like that. They can't recommend that stuff legally. So they could get not only fired and lose their license, they could literally be charged and sued because of this. So in my opinion, this is one of the most evil legislations that ever passed.
Getting the idea that the $20 billion a year in reparations might have had a bigger part in the story than what they told you in grade school.
If reparations ever did come, it would mean the end of the racial grievance industry, because once I pay my student loans off to Sally Mae, the next call she places to me, I said, I'm not answering. I don't owe you anymore. So before you all say, yes, we want reparations, just be sure that you want to go down that road.
I'm sure I want to go down that road. Okay. And the Japanese Americans were sure they wanted to go down that road. Certain Native American tribes were sure they wanted to go down that road. Slave masters themselves were sure they wanted to go down that road. Reparations is how you heal, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I'm up here today. You want to talk about healing a nation. How you going to heal a nation without addressing reparations? My dear brother, you say you don't believe reparations should be paid in cash payments. I want to ask you a question. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Would you tell European Jewish people that?
No. The discussion of reparation is a U.S.-based thing, not Holocaust.
Well, it's a humanity thing, and I think that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with the lack of humanity, and not paying reparations impacts that.
30 seconds.
Is that going to be a paper check or an electronic funds transfer? That's where I stop there. So anybody want the rest of my time?
30 seconds.
All right, so just because we were talking about this issue of the Jewish community when regards reparations, it is intellectually dishonest to support the nation of Israel and not to support reparations for African Americans. The nation of Israel as a creation is reparation for slavery during the Roman Empire. Their reparations came 2,000 years later, not from the people who enslaved them, but from Palestinians. And that was created at a Zionist movement that started in the 1870s. So it's not ancient history. So if we can do it for the Jewish community and repair reparations from 2,000 years ago, there's no reason we can't do reparations from 200 years ago.
Thank you.
So this has to be the most disrespectful thing I learned today. And I bet you didn't know this, but at the next Olympic Games, the Native Americans who invented lacrosse won't even be allowed to play it. So to explain, modern lacrosse derives from a sport played by the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, who are commonly known by their somewhat disrespectful exonym, the Iroquois. It was a deeply important and spiritual practice. For example, male newborns were given miniature cradle sticks and adults were buried with their favorite stick. And in the 1800s, white Canadians who colonized the lands of the Haudenosaunee sought to appropriate the sport for themselves. They did this by formalizing its practice and creating rules around participation in official contests, with one of them being, no Indian must play in a match for a white club unless previously agreed upon. And due to this civilizing mission, indigenous children were forced to give up their ancestral practice for European sports. And although lacrosse did survive, it was stripped of its spiritual significance and repackaged by colonial institutions. Fast forward to today, the Olympic Charter requires teams to represent recognized nation states with national Olympic committees. But this framework assumes European-style nation states and completely ignores indigenous nations which predate colonial borders by centuries. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy has existed for over 1,000 years and has maintained treaties with the United States, France, Great Britain, New York State, and the Netherlands. They travel on their own passports, operate under their own governance structures, and maintain diplomatic relationships as a sovereign entity. On top of this, their lacrosse team, the Haudenosaunee Nationals, have competed in international sports competitions since 1990. They've ranked third in the world and have traveled to every single world championship. But still, they won't be allowed to play at the Olympics. And the International Olympic Committee has suggested that the solution be that Haudenosaunee athletes try out for the US or Canadian teams. In other words, the only way that the people who invented lacrosse can play the game on the biggest stage is by acting on the behalf of the countries that colonized them. But one star on the team, Lyle Thompson, had a powerful response saying, "I would never play for Canada or the US."
Did Missouri just travel back to the 1950s? Well, this is Trump's America, so probably. According to new reports, a whites-only community could be coming to Missouri, with one already established in Arkansas. A man by the name of John Wesley Norton is trying to build what he calls a conservative, Christian, whites-only community outside of Springfield, Missouri. He says this community is for like-minded people. Let's be real, that means racists and segregation. This is in no way about values, this is about exclusion. It's about resurrecting white supremacy under the guise of freedom of association. And Missouri officials, they're silent, as you'd expect. They say nothing illegal is going on and it's private land. Since when did racism need a permit? If you're more upset about people protesting over the human rights violations of immigrants right now than you are about the resurrection of Jim Crow, then you're the problem. This isn't just a Missouri issue, this is a warning. Racism is alive and well, and it's buying land and building fences.
What the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? Do you feel brave hitting a girl? Do you feel brave now? Why don't you
Well, I did have a question as well. Do you know why they still close on Thursdays here in Monticello?
We don't close on Thursdays, but for as long as I can remember in the South, most businesses closed on Thursdays because that's when court business was handled.
Court business. So I've been told that lynchings were done on Thursdays when the businesses were closed.
Well, see, most lynchings would have been done at night with people wearing masks, hiding their identities.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, but like, yeah, they wouldn't have done it in broad daylight. They would have done it like in the dead of night where like nobody was paying attention, and then, yeah.
Okay. I know he said he heard that they were lynched.
Yeah, my mom, she told coming up, so that she used to tell that's the story she used to hear too.
I don't know if they do. Yeah, I don't know if they do it.
That they were lynched in the daytime or night.
Daytime.
Well, because you got to remember they're still doing it. You got to remember because they're still doing it, and it's against the law. So they still could get in trouble by like the feds or the.
They're still lynching.
Yeah. Because that's what the lynching was. The lynching was highly illegal. The cops would basically stand out front and be like, "Oh no, the mob, they got in front of us and they took the prisoner away, and we couldn't stop them. There were too many. And, you know, they would they turned the other cheek, and it was the normal people that were doing it. They weren't doing it in an official capacity. Yeah, it was just a bunch of, like, hopped up, like, people going and doing bad stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Angry mobs. That's
Angry
what they call
mobs
them.
of people, yes. And it doesn't take much to create an angry mob of people.
Right.
You just have to have a group of people who only get their information from one source and then let it propagate.
It can be false accusations. Doesn't matter.
Fake news.
Take a beat before you chug down that wild cherry Capri Sun pouch. Heinz is voluntarily recalling more than 5,000 cases of the drink because they could be contaminated with cleaning solution. The company says it made the discovery after some customers complained about the taste of its product. It says some diluted solution was introduced into a production line inadvertently. The affected product is the wild cherry flavor with a best when used by date of June 25th, 2023. Heinz says it is committed to upholding the highest standards of quality, and it is working with distributors and retailers to remove potentially affected products from circulation.
10 out of the 19 states in which Bill Gates owns farmland, along with at least another 10, have recently made it legal to dispose of human bodies into the municipal water supply, allowing human remains to be added into biosolid-sourced fertilizer. It's called alkaline hydrolysis and is referred to in pop culture as being very, very green. Spiritual leaders have strongly objected to alkaline hydrolysis because they say it is disrespectful to the human body, the vessel of a divine soul. And it's understandable why they say this. In alkaline hydrolysis, the human body is liquefied with lye and poured down the sewer to mix in with the community's excrement. And if that weren't bad enough, this biosludge is then collected from municipal water treatment plants and used as so-called fertilizer on factory farms. The official excuse is that it saves the government money for expensive toxic waste disposal. Meanwhile, we are all being sold food that has been grown with a toxic biosludge made up of human remains and excrement, which is then loaded with new and strange nanotechnology. Interestingly, the dystopian movie Soylent Green took place in 2022.
They're making our food out of people. Next thing they'll be breeding us like cattle for food. You gotta tell them.
Kraft Heinz is also issuing a recall of close to 6,000 pouches of its wild cherry flavor of Capri Sun. In a statement, the company disclosed the drinks might be contaminated with some cleaning solution used on food processing equipment at one of its factories.
Wait a minute. I thought Project 2025 was some shit, but now they got something called Project Esther. Ain't got shit on Project 2025. I'm just saying. So I went ahead and I took it upon myself to take some notes after reading it. And I want to go ahead and just let y'all know what's going on. So this was written by the Heritage Foundation, okay? And one of the things that's on there is all children will be homeschooled via religion, right? And anybody who resists, they have re-education camps to repurpose your brain to make you compliant. I probably should have saved this for White History Wednesday, because what? Re-education camps? Are you kidding? Abortion is criminal, and you're sentenced to unaliving if you have one. Okay? It's been written in place of the Constitution with biblical law. So they're using the Bible as law in order to control people. And speaking of the Bible, right? It's only one religion. One Bible, one God. You must comply. You can't practice religion outside of what they want us to practice. Surveillance. We thought what they doing with surveillance, like them having cameras everywhere and watching us everywhere, was a thing. No, they want to implant.
You gotta tell them silent breed is people.
They would have put something in us. And this is written. Go look it up. Like, don't take my word for it. Don't even get in the comments trying to argue with me. Go look up Project Esther, okay? They want to put implants in that keeps up with your blood pressure, your health, your everything. They want to keep up with your every move. They want to know where you are every second of the day. Granted, we know that they already have ways of doing that via other ways of surveillance. But now they want to forcibly implant us with things, okay? Women. This is big for us because we are no longer considered people. We would be property of our husbands, okay? We can no longer drive, vote, wear our hair the way we want to. We must get permission from our husbands to do anything, okay? Sterilization. At birth, they will sterilize young girls, and when they come of age to have a baby, they will grow a baby in the lab and implant the baby in you just to keep the Caucasian race going. Population control. No more LGBTQ plus, okay? You either straight or they unalive you as a man. But as a woman, you still have a working womb. So they're going to force you to marry a man. This low-key worse than Handmaid's Tale because they wasn't forced to marry people. They was just forced to get hunched on. Lord have mercy. What we going to do about this Project Esther?
These people are creating a terrible problem in our cities. They can't or won't hold a job. They flout the law constantly and neglect their children. They drink too much, and their moral standards would shame an alley cat. This was said in 1956 in Indianapolis. Not about blacks or other minorities, but about poor whites from the South. The cultural values prevalent among Southern whites included an aversion to work, proneness to violence, neglect of education, sexual promiscuity.
Ever had a personal relationship with Donald Trump?
What do you mean by personal relationships?
Have you socialized with him?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever socialized with Donald Trump in the presence of females under the age of 18?
Though I'd like to answer that question, at least today, I'm going to have to assert my 5th, 6th, and 14th Amendment rights, sir.
Drunkenness, lively music and dance, and a style of religious oratory marked by strident rhetoric, unbridled emotions, and flamboyant imagery.
You think you could just steal my girlfriend and get away with it?
And which originated not in the South, but in those parts of the British Isles from which white Southerners came. That culture long ago died out where it originated in Britain, while surviving in the American South.
Okay, so I got the transcripts. Mitch, we have to bring slavery back. Those were the good old days. Kevin, how will we do that? There's no way we can do that. Mitch, black people won't do it, but white people will. Kevin, how will we get white people to be slaves? That sounds ridiculous. Mitch, we have to get rid of the separation of church and state. We must have state-funded religious schools. Kevin, I don't see where you're getting at. Mitch, those schools will have work programs for 4th through 8th graders. Kevin, I think I see where you're going here. How is that going to work? Mitch, we get the kids to pick all the produce as a part of their work program to teach them the values of good old-fashioned blue-collar labor and the bounty of God. Kevin, I don't think that anyone will go for that. Mitch, it's all about grooming. Start in the 1st grade, and by 4th grade, they'll be ready to do it. Kevin, but we already have people to pick the produce. Mitch, we have to finish the wall. Kevin, no way that's going to happen. Mitch, we find better ways to get the immigrants out of the United States. Kevin, like doubling ICE. Mitch, yes. Kevin, this will be too hard, and we'll be too busy trying to sustain this over long periods of time and generations. Mitch, no, we get rid of the abortion laws in the United States and we make it mandatory that all 8th grade females be impregnated in order to graduate. Kevin, like replacing the crops. Ha ha ha, pun intended. Also, Kevin, I will work on getting the abortion banned. You work on state-funded religious schools. Mitch, we don't have to do either. Lindsay and I took care of that with the new SCOTUS.
Breaking news, Ruidoso, New Mexico is once again being hit by catastrophic flooding, with waters rising supposedly over 20 feet in just minutes, just 2 weeks after the last tragic flooding event, which killed 3 people and destroyed countless properties. Now, you guys have been asking me about radar, and at the moment I am seeing the same signature we saw just before the last Ruidoso flooding event and the Texas flooding event. This green energy signature is not standard, as you can see on the map. We also have these radial pulses emanating from the towers. And yes, over the last 24 hours, there have been an extensive amount of trails covering New Mexico. This is an unfolding event. Let's send our thoughts and prayers to the locals on the ground. And I'll be covering more on my website, ArenaMaster.